Welcome back to another edition of the Pagcast. I'm your host, Michael Pagani, joined alongside the director of broadcast and communications of the San Diego Gulls, Aaron Cooney. Aaron, welcome to the Pagcast. Thank you again for coming on.
Michael, thanks for having me, man. Glad to be a part of this.
How have you been doing recently? I know we had an email thread there. You said you fractured your ankle in one of your hockey games there. Like, is that fully healed?
I'm moving a lot better than I was a couple weeks ago with some doctor visits and stuff like that. So yeah, even the weekend warrior, just trying to stay in shape and play the game a little bit. End up with some injuries on my side, but the fracture was much smaller than initially thought. So that was good news. And I'm kind of it just needs rest and on our way. But I'm looking forward to getting back out there and playing again. It's kind of been a little boring just sitting home and resting the whole time. So I gotta work things off and get back in shape.
Let's get into, I guess, your story a bit here right from the start. What you started off as a broadcaster for the Erie Otters, and then you transitioned into this director of broadcast and communications role with the Gulls. Speaking on the Erie Otters part there, like what influenced you just get into broadcasting?
I always wanted to be a sports center anchor. I want to be the guy giving out highlights, doing the top 10, have some catchphrases, that kind of stuff. It just always seemed like a lot of fun. And when I graduated from high school and was moving to university, kind of looked around, wanted to find a program that would allow me to work on those kind of skills and really get in front of a camera, get on the air for the first time ever. I'd never done that before. So that was kind of what I looked for. Ended up at Point Park University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with their broadcast program. They have some deep ties to the Pittsburgh media landscape, the Pittsburgh sports landscape with all the professional teams. It just was the right fit for me. And as I continued to do more and more, get on doing some campus TV stuff, working in the campus radio station, and then came time for some internships, and I got an internship. I was a little disappointed I didn't get the sports TV internship at the one local television station, but I got a call back from the sports talk radio station in Pittsburgh, and I was like, of course, like, let's do this, and just really fell in love with radio on that side. And at the same time started doing play-by-play for the school's basketball teams and do volleyball, baseball, softball, so just about everything that the school had to offer. And I was like, this is something I really enjoy doing. And hockey has always been my number one sport. So I started seeking out, my university didn't have a hockey team. So I was like seeking out, how can I do hockey in the area? So I was doing high school. I was doing showcases from, like 10 under to like 14 under. So all these different things, whatever I could just to get the opportunity to do it. And so that was kind of the path that I kind of took, and was able to meet some mentors. I got an internship through the Pittsburgh Penguins and met some people there that really helped me along, what to look for, can I hone these skills, what skills do I need to add that's going to get me that my foot in the door in that first kind of position. So I was very grateful for those connections that I made and those people that helped me out along the way. And it just so happened that I graduated from school. The Otters position opened up, applied, and a short 2-hour drive north for me from Pittsburgh. And I was working in the Ontario Hockey League. So it was a lot of fun, because for me, junior hockey was watching don't have that huge exposure as you would have, probably, in Canada. But for me, watching World Juniors like every Christmas, that's what I was sitting down to go do. Like everybody else was watching bowl games. Like, it's USA Canada tonight. Like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, this is the best stuff out there. So to jump in and jump right into hockey, into junior hockey like that, it was such a great opportunity for me to get my feet wet and then really sink myself into the hockey business. So that's pretty much a story and for how I got started in play-by-play.
As Canadians, we don't really have to question watching the World Juniors. We just know that it's always on.
Yeah, but that's what it became. It's like, all right, we're starting up here. I know Boxing Day is right after Christmas, and
yeah, exactly.
World Juniors is going right after. And that was people down in the States. It's growing. It's grown a bit now. That's a little more exposure and everything. But yeah, people. It was like, what is the World Junior Championships? It's like, tune in for some of the best hockey you're going to see here with like the top prospects that are be in the NHL here soon.
Speaking on that Pittsburgh Penguins point there, how big of that was for your career to get, work with them? Could you speak on that?
100%. It was, I mean, I'm probably not in San Diego without my internship with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Between the people I've met there, the mentors I gathered that I still talk to today, that have just been so helpful. Still staying with communication with them and just being someone to bounce ideas off of, and even at some points, some crisis situations that I've never thought I would encounter in working with high profile players like Connor McDavid. I need a little help on some of those sides. And what do I do here as the first couple of years of my career? So they were great. And I think on top of that too, working in the radio side for the Pittsburgh Penguins, that was where my internship was at, but I also spent a lot of time in a lot of different locker rooms, whether it was the Penguins locker room or the visiting team locker room, and seeing for kind of my role now and also in those junior hockey levels, it's a combined role. You're not just a play-by-play guy. There's also that kind of manager of PR and setting up interviews and things like that. So I was able to just be in those rooms and see how the top level, the NHL, how those PR people and those media relations folks handle a post game, a pre-game, the press conference with coach, how that stuff kind of works. So I kind of gathered my own way to handle these things through being around them. So it was a massive experience that I still look back on, and I know I picked this up from Pittsburgh and saw this in this locker room, or still can shoot a text over to a couple of people and be like, hey, well, what's going on? Great to, wanted to hear from you. What do you think of this? Blah, 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 blah. What are you guys doing for this? So it's still part of those connections, still part of my career right now. And just so thankful for that opportunity.
And then 2 hours north, you started with the Erie Otters in 2013. How did that opportunity come about?
Luck, right place, right time, to name a few things. And I was probably the cheapest candidate out there that coming out of college, and I would take whatever job. There was no haggling, there was whatever, and I was just wanting to get my foot in the door. So I think that was part of it. But when you just kind of graduate, and when hockey season are ending, they're all starting to come to an end at the in spring. That's when a lot of the turnover and management changes, whatever it may be, and you just fire out emails, calls, whatever you can do, just trying to be like, hey, this is what I can do. How can I help? Blah, blah, blah. And just so happened to be that I heard back from Erie, as that was one of the few teams that kind of had those openings. Luckily, it was still in the States, and I was ready to go anywhere. I had no idea what a visa would have looked like if it would have been a Canadian team, but so I got lucked out with that situation in that scenario that Erie was just a couple hours north. And going back to having those kind of mentors, I was talking to my mentor at the Penguins, and he was like, oh, I'll send a note, send an email, and then up to those people, up to the folks in Erie, the hiring managers. And then it was, heard right back then, like a day or two later, that from them. So it was, that's kind of where it kind of popped up. It was my internship. I was one of the few that's lucky that internship ended, graduation, and then just a few months later, you're hearing back and you're going for job interviews. So it doesn't happen a lot often, but I was just, it's kind of a stroke of luck, right place, right time kind of thing. And obviously in the skill set, and I went out and just kind of proved myself to make sure that they knew they made the right choice.
And one of the things that came along with your experience with Erie was watching Connor McDavid. And that's one of the points that I have to bring up. Did you know right away he was going to be a generational talent?
When I heard from the owner, Sherry Bassett, when he called me to hire me, that's the first thing he told me. And I had heard about Connor before, you stay in touch and stay in tune with everything. And I was reading about hockey, and hey, there's this kid coming up. And I think it was right around the time that I got hired. SportsCenter had an article on him Sports Illustrated had, he's the LeBron James of hockey, right after his first year as a 15-year-old. So it was like, okay, this is kind of a big deal. And I don't think I realized how big of a deal it was until you kind of get in there, and then you start seeing media requests, and they need him doing this and talking to his agent and making sure he also has the time to 16-year-old kid. So there's a lot that kind of came with it. And it was just like, this is my first job, man. And all this stuff is flying over my head. And I gotta manage this guy that's going to be that is the next one. It was like the torch has been passed from Crosby now it's going to this guy. And it was like, let's see what happens. And it just kind of blew your mind. And then when you can finally watch him and play, when you start calling the game, it was like, this guy is different, like way different than everybody else. He is thinking a game on a different level. He skates at a different level. Like, and this is in the same age group. And he's also better than the guys that are NHL drafted plus 2 years. It's like, this is crazy. So that was, those are like stories that I got and I'm sure you won't be the last person to ask me for an interview about Connor McDavid. What was he like in junior hockey? It was unbelievable. It was just unbelievable to watch this kid, or watch Connor as a kid do what he's doing. I mean, you see some of the highlights he does, now with Edmonton. He's doing that. He was carving kids up, 7 years ago too. So it's crazy.
And not only was it overwhelming for Connor to do all these media requests, but it was also overwhelming for you to facilitate everything.
There wasn't enough time for everything. Yeah, that was probably the hardest part, was having to be the guy that said no to a lot of things, whether it was, charities. And it was like, there's only so much Connor to go around. And he has he's got to focus on hockey because he's trying to, at the time, well, yes, we know he's going to get drafted, but he's going to get drafted. He's got a season to focus on. He had World Juniors. And so it was wild trying to make sure we took care of him and allowed him to be a kid at the same time. I think that was the number one point that we tried to do. Didn't want to roll him out there every single day for media requests and interviews. And he's out at this place and this place. It's like, he needs to be he still needs to be a kid. So I think that was the big thing. And it was just kind of silly some of the times going around. And it's not like the NHL where every building you pull the butt, you drive in and it goes into the arena and you're just kind of underground. And there's like some of these junior rinks, they're community rinks. You're outside, you got to walk through the people. And we're trying to get Connor through hordes of people with autographs, and he would stop and sign for everybody if we allowed him. And then I'm trying to usher him through and trying to push people through and like push back. And I know Connor wants to do, he would stop and sign for everybody. It's like, okay, we can't be here for 3 hours because we need to get to the next city. We play tomorrow, get to the hotel. And now I'm getting the eyes from coach, like looking through the bus. I'm like, all right, okay, we're done. So it's like, I got to cut him off. And then I hear the end. It was funny kind of playing that kind of security guard. It's like, dude, I'm making like 20 grand a year and people are telling me to get a real job as I'm just trying to we're just trying to get to the next city because everybody has to rest, get the team on the bus and get going because we got to do this again tomorrow. We're, the next city or get back home and everything. So it's those kind of memories and those things I take with me like everywhere. It was just, it was like this Connor McDavid mania, especially comes back from the injury in his hand, that draft year, returns at World Juniors, wins a gold medal. And it's on to, hey, this Connor McDavid kind of farewell tour around the OHL where he was selling out buildings by himself. Like people weren't coming to see the home team. They weren't coming to see the Otters. They were coming to see McDavid before they had to pay $100-some a ticket. And you're going to see him in a junior hockey rink for $20. So it was just so funny seeing that second half of the season, how just the insanity that the McDavid mania took over heading into that draft.
In the 2014-15 season, the Otters made it to the OHL finals, but unfortunately lost to the Generals. What do you remember most about that run?
I'll tell you what, every step along that way, starting with Sarnia, like you knew you're going to get through those guys. You had a big matchup. I mean, the big rivalry for a lot of people. The London Knights were kind of the Yankees of the of the OHL. So it's a lot of people are like rooting against them and the McDavid thing. And you had McDavid and you need to get through them. got through in 4 games, and then you had that Sioux State Marie team in the conference final, who are an absolute stud. Like the amount of talent that they put together for that run, and McDavid put the team on his back. I think he had 19 points in 5 games, in 6 games in that run. And it was just, the Otters were playing with only realistically 4 defensemen. I don't think because Curtis McDermott was suspended at the time, which kind of drew in TJ Fergus, who was a rookie that year. And against that Sioux team, like, we had 2 guys back on that third pairing, just pretty much glued to the bench. And man, Jay McKee played. Was it Troy Dene, Travis Dermott? That was your one pair. Corey Genovese, and Darren Radish. They played pretty much every minute of that series, and maybe got a bit of a breather for 15, 20 seconds when they put out the third pairing, but they were coming right back off. It was being offensive zone draw, and if we can keep the possession a little bit, then they were coming back off. Like, it was insane. They basically played 4 defensemen for an entire series against that team was stacked. I think they had 13 or 14 draft picks, and then 2 guys get picked, like multiple picks the next draft. So you had, like, basically the entire roster was full of NHL prospects. And the team pulled it off. It was an unbelievable series. It was the only time Sportsnet came down for do a broadcast in the States, just to have Connor McDavid on. There were 3 games in Erie, which had never happened before for that conference final. It was just absolutely wild. And then I remember, getting to the OHL final, you just ran into a bigger and more mature team. I think a lot of people forget how young that Otters team was. A lot of people remember McDavid, they had Connor McDavid and Dylan Strome and Alex DeBrincat. It's like, yeah, DeBrincat was 7. Like, all these guys were 17. Your best players are your 18, 19-year-olds. Some of the play Erie was running with, their top players were still underage for the draft. Like, it was crazy. And it's like, well, Erie just kind of ran out of steam, just couldn't put things together. But it's like, if you had McDavid as a 19-year-old, maybe it's a different story. But you got to remember Taylor Radish, Kyle Maximovich, they were 16 years old, just first-year players. They were playing 4th-line minutes for the team. Like, ran into a much deeper team in Oshawa, and it was just impressive the way that Erie got through what they did to get to that OHL final and really set the tone for what was to come the next 2 years.
When McDavid did leave and play his rookie season with Edmonton, did you get a sense that the Otters were going to go into a more of a retool mode?
No, because the tools were all there. Like, after watching what that team could do, and like I mentioned, those couple 16-year-olds that were playing with the group throughout that playoff run, is like, okay, these are the pieces that in 2-3 years they're going to be major contributors. And you still had Dylan Strome. You had your overage, some overage defensemen that came back that season. Like, Erie was still poised, and they just had to make the right moves. And if you see how they kind of projected the next couple of years, stood pat in the 2016 year at the deadline, didn't make any moves, didn't make any trades, just kind of rolled what they had, and ultimately lost to the London Knights in 4 games. They liked what they had, but the reason being is there was a heavy belief that following year, that was the year. And in junior, you gotta, everything's in cycles. You gotta know when it's time to push the buttons, when it's time to go all in. And Erie saved every trade chip that they had for that next season. And that's how it kind of worked out for 16-17. There were some question marks, like what was going to happen. Were you going to get Dylan Strome back for his 19-year-old year? I don't know. It took until November till they got him back, but the pieces were there in the long-term trajectory that we're going to be fine in the 15-16 year. And really, it was going to be, the plan was to go all in for 16-17 with how things were going to play out. And that's a lot of people thought that even before that OHL final run, they thought that the Otters should have traded McDavid at the deadline just to recoup and just bring in all those assets. But credit to the hockey management at the time, went for it. It paid off. And that 4-year stretch that Erie had, it was something to be a part of. Just, I'll never forget. The only CHL team ever to string together 4 50-win seasons consecutively. So that's, nobody else can say that. And this team pulled it off.
Speaking from your perspective, how cool is it to see that, you broadcasted some of these players in their early careers and now they're carving it up in the NHL? Not so much with Dylan Strome per se, but Alex DeBrincat and Connor McDavid, of course.
Yeah, I'm always look around for my Otters guys. Like every time, and it's funny, like the more and more you listen to, podcast, and when somebody I really enjoy listening to and hearing what he has to say is Jeff Merrick, and like one of his go-to things is, or one of his go-to sayings is like, I don't root for team, I root for stories and root for people. And I started to find that myself. As you start to work in the sports business, you kind of maybe lose that fandom a little bit, where it's like, the hometown team, that's what I'm going for. But you're so close to these guys. I mean, you're riding a bus with them every single day. You're in a hotel with them, at every single meal with them, for 7-8 months of a year. You root for these guys. And I love seeing these guys go on to do, continue their careers. I mean, even if it's, Erie's got a good track record the last couple of years, and you're seeing some superstars in the National Hockey League. But you're also seeing them go and do their own things wherever it may be, from university to starting businesses to, you name it. So it's great seeing even what some of these alumni are going off and doing in their own careers. But on the NHL side, it's like every time you turn on a game, I'm like, oh, there's a former Otter, there's another former Otter. I think they're going to have, if I'm doing this right, the Otters will win. A former Otter won a Stanley Cup for a 5th straight year. This year, there's enough alumni that are around between Colorado and then also on New York and Tampa Bay that another Otter is going to want to get a cup ring. So you see these guys always rooting for it. Obviously waiting for you want all of them to win and everything like that. But man, when you can just watch highlights and turn on NHL Network or whatever it may be, and it's just like, oh, Warren Fogle scored. Yeah, figures, like that's what he does.
He's been doing that since Erie.
Anthony Cirelli scored another big overtime goal. Yeah, that's what he does. I've seen that multiple times, and the Oshford Generals fans can understand that one too. And same for DeBrincat. He potted 40 again. Yeah, okay, yeah, I could have told you that. So it's a lot of fun seeing these guys grow up and now go on to even bigger things. So always rooting for them no matter where they're at and what they're doing.
One of the better things that has come from the pandemic for you is actually relocating to San Diego, where you are now. How did you find out about that job promotion?
I, at the time, belonged to a talent agency, and it kind of rolled through, and you can kind of feel yourself. I was almost at 8 years in Erie, where I had taken on more responsibility, especially on the sales side and in marketing, things like that. So I had a lot of different hats that I pulled in and put on and worked with, and you could just start to feel like I was ready for the next challenge. Didn't know what it was going to be. And then, San Diego opened up, and I know it's one of the top, like when I saw this position open up, I was like, this is one of the top peak AHL organizations going. I mean, they've led the league in attendance 2 years in a row, just a couple years right before the pandemic. They're constantly atop in terms of business accolades. This is a well-run ship that I can learn from, take a next step. It's in a major U.S. city and market. For my career is like this would be a great challenge for me and the next step for whatever comes next in my life. So it was when I saw that opened up, OHL still wasn't playing. We were still like fingers crossed, maybe we'll get something in 2020, 2021. it just kind of never came to fruition. And threw my hat into that ring, went through the interview process and went through that ringer, and came out on top. And I was just so lucky, so blessed. It was like a complete whirlwind at that time, because you go from trying to figure out, like trying to lock down sponsors in case there's a potential OHL season. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, I'm driving a U-Haul across the country with my entire life in here to California. So no, saw that open up through the talent agency, put my hat into the ring, and it all just kind of worked out. And now after working inside a bubble for a year, and then into kind of a little more normal regular season, like it's been a lot of fun in just a year and a half that I've been out here in California.
With you mentioning that bubble, have there been any teams that you haven't seen play so far with your 2 years?
We don't see a whole lot of East Coast at all.
Right.
So we'll play, it's a lot of in division, a lot of the Pacific Division, which is when the AHL created that Pacific Division, whole point was for the NHL teams to get their affiliates closer. I mean, you had for Anaheim's, that's our affiliate here in the NHL. Anaheim's affiliate previous to this was in Norfolk, Virginia. So you got to fly guy 5.5 hours across the country if you need him, like on an injury recall or something. So this guy's already dead tired, locked up from sitting on a plane for 5.5 hours. Then you got to try to get him into a game. You got to battle the Southern California traffic just to get to the game coming from an airport or something. So it can be a bit daunting. It just wears people down, right? So when they changed that whole thing, it makes a ton of sense in theory, in the argument. Start this Pacific Division, and now all those California teams. I mean, we're adding Seattle's affiliate next year.
Coachella,
so
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Coachella. So you see all those. That's pretty much your bread and butter. It's still for the most part a league that travels by bus. So there's not a whole lot. Not coming back to see your Hershey, your Wilkes-Barre, Toronto Marlies, whatever it may be. Where you kind of stick over here, and then if you get to the finals, you start to see a little bit more of some of the other action. But haven't gotten to the East Coast yet.
Do you find that part there, how you don't see East Coast teams a bit a weird scenario there? Because with the OHL, you're kind of always seeing Western and Eastern, and then with the AHL, you only see the Western teams.
No, from being on the business side, I understand it from that side, like that point, like, hey, that is a lot of money for an AHL team to start flying back and forth to play a bunch of teams. Now, I think there are teams that be into that would totally, if the money was right and everybody's going to reciprocate and kind of fly back and forth. I think it would be really cool. Even if it's just like one trip, hit up a division a couple times and come back or something like that. But no, it's like when you learn with these bus travel things, and even in the OHL, it was, well, you're playing the teams closer to you more times than you're going to travel up. Like Erie's only sees Sault Ste. Marie once a year, or travels up there once a year, because it's a 10-hour bus ride and it's a hotel, and that's a lot of money on the bottom line and on the hockey budget. So I try to make it business wise as easy and fiscally responsible all around. So that's kind of where it's at. Understood. And you know what? I think like we play Ontario, which is the LA Kings affiliate, 12 times this past season. And then those guys are going to move up and be the Kings and the Ducks, already a major rivalry. They're already going to hate each other. It just creates a lot of fun in that fan rivalry. And you already saw these guys, hey, they used to fight 3-4 times down in the AHL. Now they're up in the NHL and they're doing it here again. They already got that animosity between each other. So it kind of maybe builds a little more to that side with how you already have these rivalries and feed off of those a little bit in the AHL and just kind of bring them into the NHL level. There's a lot of games, but it's a lot of closer here towards the Pacific.
As we're closing off this interview here, my last question for you would be, do you have any advice for aspiring broadcasters or anyone that wants to get into hockey business?
I would say try everything. As I mentioned earlier, wanted to be a Sports Center host on TV, and just kind of fell in love with play-by-play and radio. And that's where I went. I also learned that writing for a newspaper wasn't for me. Like it just just didn't, I don't know. It just didn't work out that way. So I wasn't going to be a blogger. That didn't jive with me. So try as many things. Don't get discouraged, because it's tough. There's only, I mean, I'm not doing play-by-play anymore, but there's only, 32 play-by-play jobs on radio side. I mean, less than that with some of the simulcasts in the NHL, and 32 TV jobs. There's a lot more broadcasters out there than there are the jobs. So you can't get discouraged. You have to keep plugging away and keep fighting for it. And to me, hard work will beat out talent when talent doesn't work hard. It's one thing I've always gone back to from when I played hockey. There's one thing that my coach always said, and it was like, it's true. So you have to keep grinding. You can't give up. It's going to be tough. The odds are you're going to start really small and then work your way up. Nobody jumps right to ESPN or right to the NHL. It just does not happen. You grind. And in my situation, we didn't have a hockey team. It didn't matter. As long as you can get on the air, and like you're doing right now with a podcast, and you're just continuing to get better. And to me, it's all reps and finding how comfortable you are on the air with a camera in front of you, holding a mic, maybe just a headset on, whatever it may be. It's all the same stuff. The more comfortable you can get with doing that, the better you're going to be whenever, hey, there is a hockey job open up and you can go do that hockey. Like, the sport, but if you're super comfortable with yourself and being on the air, it's going to just easy for you when you move into that role. So those are a lot of things that I tell students and I tell everybody else going forward. Like, if I can do it for about 7 years, like, and find a way to figure it out and get there, anybody else can do it. You just work hard.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, if you work hard enough and put yourself to that and set your mind to that, you can make it happen.
Oh, I'd like to thank again, Aaron Cooney, for joining me on today's Pagcast. Thank you again, Aaron.
Michael, thanks for having me, man. Glad we could do this.